Time Solves a Lot of Things by Louis T. Montant, Jr. Worry caused me to lose 10 years of my life. Those 10 years should have been the most fruitful and richest years of any young man's life, the years from 18 to 28. I realize now that losing those years was no one's fault but my own. I worried about everything: my job, my health, my family, my feelings of inferiority. I was so frightened that I used to cross the street to avoid meeting people I knew. When I met a friend on the street, I would often pretend not to notice him because I was afraid of being snubbed. I was so afraid of meeting strangers, so terrified in their presence, that in one space of 2 weeks I lost out on 3 different jobs simply because I didn't have the courage to tell those 3 prospective employers what I knew I could do. Then one day 8 years ago, I conquered worry in one afternoon and have rarely worried since then. That afternoon, I was in the office of a man who had far more troubles than I had ever faced, yet he was one of the most cheerful men I had ever known. He'd made a fortune in 1929 and then lost every cent. He made another fortune in 1933 and lost that, and another fortune in 1939 and lost that too. He had gone through bankruptcy and had been hounded by enemies and creditors. Troubles that would have broken some men and driven them to suicide rolled off him like water off a duck's back. As I sat in his office that day 8 years ago, I envied him and wished that God had made me like him. As we were talking, he tossed a letter to me that he'd received that morning and said, "Read that." It was an angry letter, raising several embarrassing questions. If I'd received such a letter, it would have sent me into a tailspin. I said, "Bill, how are you going to answer it?" "Well," Bill said, "I'll tell you a little secret. Next time you've really got something to worry about, take a pencil on the piece of paper and sit down and write out in detail just what's worrying you. Then put that piece of paper in the lower right-hand drawer of your desk and wait a couple of weeks and then look at it. If what you wrote down still worries you when you read it, put that piece of paper back in your lower right-hand drawer. Let it sit there for another 2 weeks. It'll be safe there. Nothing will happen to it. But in the meantime, a lot may happen to the problem that is worrying you. I have found out that if I only have patience, the worry that's trying to harass me will often collapse like a pricked balloon." That bit of advice made a great impression on me. I've been using Bill's advice for years now, and as a result, I rarely worry about anything. Time solves a lot of things. Time may also solve what you're worrying about today.